It is our honor to introduce you to our next speaker, who is a veteran, who has served. Ramona Baylor is currently serving as the Toastmasters District 117th Director, meaning that she's the top dog on the eastern part of this state. She is a decorated veteran, and she is combat tested. Help me welcome Ramona Baylor.
I just realized my toes were frozen when I went to stand up, so give me a second. Combat tested, combat certified, twice. My first time into combat was at the age of 18. I want you to think about, what were you doing at the age of 18? It might take some of you a little bit longer. Some of you are not there yet, but I had just finished high school, joined the military at 17. When you join the military at 17, your parents have to sign the dotted line for you. You can only imagine how my mom felt when I had to call her from Fort Bragg, North Carolina in December to tell her, "Mom, I'm going to combat." I get the chills thinking about it because I'm a mother, and my daughter has also served in the Air Force. And I can only imagine how she felt as a mother, knowing her daughter from a small town in Ohio was getting ready to go to combat. Chapter 1, pre-combat. Before that call on December 5th in 1990, I was living my best life. I had just graduated basic training, I had gone through my skills training, and I had so much fun going through airborne school. Yes, I had learned how to be a paratrooper and to jump out of a perfectly good airplane. But I had so much fun. Again, living my best life. Turned 18 in September, got to Fort Bragg in December, and I hear the lovely words from my sergeant, "Don't unpack your bags, you're gonna get the call." Like, what does that mean? I'm gonna get the call, what does that mean? You can only imagine at 18 what we think about. We're not thinking about the news or the newspaper, but one thing that was a reality to me on Fort Bragg, North Carolina, that it was empty. And if you've ever been to Fort Bragg, one of the largest military installations in the world, you would be in shock to know that it was empty. So this was my reality check. Again, I had called my mom, so my family was preparing what the reality was going to be the worst. And I started to realize I didn't have any experience. I had just come from training, and they were sending me to combat. My unit, the 530th Service and Supply Battalion, had been in Saudi Arabia since August. And here I come, strolling along in January. And I wanted to share with you that how cold it is this evening, that's how cold it was that night. When we landed in Saudi Arabia, I didn't know that it was going to be cold. I was supposed to be going to the desert. It was actually probably a few degrees colder than this. But let me tell you this, the Army supplied me with 2 big duffel bags and 1 big rucksack of plenty of equipment to keep me warm. So I was warm. When I think about my first deployment, I always think about it's a process. And that helped me 17 years later when I had to deploy again to Iraq. Chapter 2. I've arrived. I finally made it to Saudi Arabia. I know I sound excited. I wasn't very excited then, but I sound excited now because it's many, many years ago. But I arrived, and I knew that I was there to meet my military family, the family that will be my brothers and sisters for life. Once you get in country, again, it's a process. It was about 2 days later that I finally made it to my home base, which was called, and I'm not very excited to say what it was called, Super Lake City. Finally made it there, and one thing that I'd like to share about deployments is whenever you arrive to your home base, it's something like this, pitch black, quiet, except for that car beeping now. And you're just kind of shuffling along, following the sergeants because I didn't know much. You get told your room is there, go find your cot, lay it down for the night. The next morning I wake up and I finally get to see where I'm actually at. I'm actually on a small man-made, let's see how I can explain it, a small city that the engineers have built for us. Just small wooden buildings, and there I was in my little room with my roommate, who she was surprised to see me in the morning because she was sound asleep when I got there. I introduced myself, and I started to learn the ropes. My daily life of being in combat and learning again how to be part of my military family. Combat tested. The first time that I was combat tested was an evening, again, something like this. It was probably 2 in the morning though. And we hear the alarms go off. And we hear our sergeants running up and down the hall. Get in Mop 4, lock and load. I'm like, please let this be a bad dream. It wasn't a bad dream. The one thing that you don't want to hear in combat is break the seal. We had our nuclear, biological, chemical suits in a sealed package. And we were told, once you break the seal, it's not going to be good going forward, because that means that we're under attack. We get the knock on the door, break the seal, get in Mop 4, lock and load. It took about 2 seconds to register, and of course me and my roommate got into our gear, locked and load our rifles. But little did I know, while I was getting ready, she wasn't. She had her mask on, but she wasn't moving, and I'm like, what's wrong with this girl? She was having a panic attack, and that's all I needed. Again, no experience, never been in combat. She's been there for about 6-7 months, but this was our first attack on our small installation. While I got ready, I finished getting ready, excuse me. I helped her get ready, and we were in agreement that she was okay. She was locked and loaded, I was locked and loaded, and we were ready for what was about to happen. A few hours later, we get the knock on the door. All clear. Thank you, Jesus. Whew. I did not have to put any of that training into action, although I was ready. And that was my first time being combat tested. Chapter 3. Still on my first deployment, we get the word from our higher-ups that we're moving up north. And that just means we're moving closer to the action. I wasn't too excited about this, but I stayed motivated, and although 90% were only sent forward and 10% were going to stay back, I was the fortunate 90%. And there I was preparing to go up north. Again, no experience, not knowing what to expect. We're getting together in what is called a convoy. It's a few hundred vehicles moving from point A to point B. I also want to share that I didn't know where point B was. Being a private in the Army, this information is not shared with you. Although I think if I would have asked, maybe they would have told me, but nobody did. I was just following orders, and excited to see where this was going to take us. As a woman in the military, I don't think some of my male leaders took into effect that when we had pit stops where I was going to utilize the facilities. We got creative. That's all I will say. Moving up north, in my mind, I'm like, oh, it'll probably take a couple of days. Well, it took a couple of weeks, and we're driving down these sandy roads with no markings. It's just sand, and we're just driving and driving and driving. We make pit stops, which happen to be good pit stops because I get to use real facilities. I also get to take a hot shower, which is not normal in combat, and have something other than the lovely meals ready to eat, the MREs. This was our meal 3 times a day. So when you're visiting other units on their, what we could call base camps, they had other lovely treats. If it was a pie or anything, a Snickers, that was gold, and that was lovely. We're finally making it to our destination. Destination unknown is what I call it. I don't know where I was. I just know I was in the desert in Saudi Arabia. Again, guess what the weather's like? Similar to this. Guess what it looks like? Similar to this. Just turn off all the lights off. We arrive at night, again, told by my lovely leaders, which I do love. I do love them. There's the tent, straight ahead. Take your bags, use your flashlight, find a cot, go to bed, see you at 7 a.m. Got it. Too easy. The tent seemed fairly large in the nighttime, but I really didn't know how large it was. It just seemed large. I find a cot, some random cot that has nothing on it, so that's how you know no one's sleeping there. Roll out my sleeping bag and go to bed and get up. The lights come on in the morning. Little do I know, there's about 300 of us in one tent. And about 4 female soldiers, and I'm in the middle. It's quite awkward, but at the same time, when you're in combat, being a male or female, it doesn't matter. We all had somewhere safe to sleep, and it was warm. There was some nice potbelly stoves in there that kept us nice and toasty. But a few days later, they did move the 4 females to the back of the tent with some type of tarp that I guess separated us from the men. And then I'm combat tested again. We're settled in, I'm on the night shift, and me and the 3 sergeants hear gunfire outside our tent. That's the last thing you want to hear. And we were not sleepy, we were wide awake. It was only 2 gunshots, but that's 2 too many inside the perimeter, which I felt we had a very strong perimeter. We had someone fly by and knock on the tent. Doesn't sound like wood, but knocks on the tent. Lock and load, defend the perimeter. Lock and load, defend the perimeter. Again, I'm still 18, still lacking experience, and now this is my first instance where I might actually have to kill someone. That's a hard thought, and that's hard to swallow, even talking about it now, this many years later, because I wasn't going to go out like that. It's me. You're going to have to, I'm sorry, it's going to be me. I don't know how, any other way to say it. And it's emotional to talk about it. To know that you might have to take someone's life. But that's the situation I was in, because I was in combat, and that's the reality of combat. A few hours later, we're told the perimeter is clear. They've captured the intruder. Life goes on. We continue our daily duties. We go to bed, come back the next night, and come to find out, it was not an intruder. It was one of our soldiers who had his weapon locked and loaded, did not put it on safety as we were instructed when you enter a vehicle, jumped out of the vehicle, weapon hit the ground first, shot him in the leg, and he had to be medevaced. I'm glad to share that story with you rather than sharing a different story with you on how it could have ended. And the soldier was fine. I never learned who the soldier was, but I would have some words with him. And it was a him. Chapter 4. I don't know what my time is. I apologize. There's no timing lights or anything. Am I doing okay? Chapter 4. 17 years later, I've made the decision to come back to Fort Bragg knowing that my brigade was on deployment cycle, knowing as soon as I hit the ground, I was going to hit the ground running. I hit the ground, Fort Bragg, North Carolina, in April of 2008. July, we go to our 30-day training in the nice, toasty Fort Polk, Louisiana. The next couple of months, we get all our equipment. It's shipped out to Iraq, and we're on the birds in December. We're on Pope Air Force Base, getting ready to deploy. I'm now an E7, no longer a private, so I've moved up the ranks quite a bit. I'm a supervisor of 10 soldiers, and I'm the leader of my chalk, which means I'm about to take 200 soldiers into combat. Think about that. 200 lives in my hands. Whatever I say, they do. Wherever I go, they go. If I say go, they go. If I say stop, they stop. If I say jump, they jump. Literally. You'll find out why I said that. After the 18, 20, you count them, 30 hours of being in flight, because there's pit stops and you can't just fly from Pope Air Force Base to Iraq. It's just not possible, nor is it strategic. We get on the Chinook, which is a large aircraft that can carry quite a bit of equipment and quite a bit of soldiers. All of our equipment is sitting in front of us, and we're sitting in our chairs with our rucksack. Again, it's about this temperature. It looks like this at night. It's just like deja vu right here. Turn all the lights off. And the green lights actually are bringing back a memory, because on the aircraft there's a couple of lights on, and one is green and one is red. But we're flying from Kuwait to Iraq. It takes a couple of hours to get there. We're flying over cities and places unknown. And I feel like we're getting close, and they come and tell me, "You're the leader." I say, "Yes, I'm the leader." "Okay, we're about 5 minutes out. Get your troops ready." So obviously I'm waking people up. And he says to me, "We're not going to land." I'm sorry, "Excuse me? Can you say that again? Because it's loud in the aircraft." "We're not going to land." "Well, what are you going to do?" "Because I need to get these soldiers off this aircraft." "We're going to hover." "Okay, and like how much time do we have?" "Well, you need to be fast. We got to get in and out." Obviously they know something I don't know. Okay, so I tell the soldiers, grab 2 duffel bags, grab your rucksack, keeping in mind we're in full combat gear with weapon, with flak vest. Yeah, it's pretty heavy. It probably weighs more than what I weigh now. And of course I'm the first one out, and I'm just praying. And whoever you believe in, trust me, you'll be praying to whoever you believe in. Please, let me just land on my feet, and everything will be okay. I'm carrying all this gear, so I'm already stressing out. Not so much getting from point A to point B, but I just want to land safely. I get out, they're hovering, they're yelling at us, "Get out the bird!" I'm not yelling now because I don't want to scare anybody. "Get off the bird!" So here we go, and I jump, and thank God I do land on both feet. And the instructions that I'm given: look to your half left and look for the light. I'm like, what light? It's pitch black. And when they say light, I mean like a smaller than that light on that porch. And it's like a zillion miles away. At least it felt like. Maybe it was 2 miles. I'm like, okay, I think I see the light. I see the light. I tell my other sergeants, we have to go in the direction of the light. They're like, "That's the instructions you were given?" Yeah, that's the instructions. These pilots, obviously, they've landed here before, and they know what they're talking about. There we go, me with 200 soldiers. There were obviously other aircraft behind us because 200 can't fit on a Chinook. We're waiting for everyone to get together and start moving in the direction of the light. Luckily, the light starts getting bigger and bigger, and then I see a truck that turned the lights on. I'm like, thank you, Jesus. Because I didn't know where I was. I had never been to this destination. It's pitch black. It's about 2 in the morning, and I hope I'm not walking towards the enemy. Thank God it was First Sergeant Musnicki, and he doesn't know that he's in this speech, but thank God, because I remember him. I heard him say, Sergeant Baylor. I'm like, thank you, Jesus. I don't know if I was happy that I heard him or just happy that I was finally getting rid of all this equipment off my body. We get there again in the nighttime. We get set up and start our daily business of being now in Iraq and starting our daily duties. Combat tested, and this is my final story. Because I was a senior leader on this deployment, when the first sergeant, which was a rank above me, had to leave the country for a couple of weeks on his R&R, because you're all authorized to leave the country for some downtime, I was put in charge. We had a casualty in one of our units. So our battalion is about 800 soldiers, but our brigade is about 3,000. We had a casualty in our battalion from one of our infantry units. And because I work in human resources, I had to help with some of the paperwork. That wasn't the hard part, because we have casualty assistance downrange that helps with that. The hard part was the leaders were told to go to look at the vehicle that he was killed in. And I'm like, excuse me? I'm doing what? Well, you need to see, because there was some type of incident report. We had to make sure that the incident report was going to be done properly and to make sure they had so many witnesses. I'm thinking, it can't be that bad. What could they have done? Well, I didn't know what had taken place, but there was some type of explosion, shrapnel, and obviously a lot of blood. We're told to climb in, and the blood was not cleaned out. Let me say that again. The blood was not cleaned out. Combat tested, combat certified. What I can say about being in combat is I learned from my leaders on my first deployment when I was 18 years old. I learned to stay alert in order to stay alive, and I learned how to keep my head on a swivel. Thank you.